Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome. We are so excited to have you here to talk about big room planning today. As people are joining, take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're joining from, and what your role is. We'll introduce ourselves in just a moment, but we want to make sure we get everybody in and settled. So again, who are you? Where are you coming from? And what is your role? Greetings. All right, we've got Texas in the house. Oh, we've got a Caden. How exciting. Fantastic. Colorado. More Texas. Maryland. Fantastic. Utah. Hawaii, which is where I wish I was right now. I'm in Minneapolis. Memphis.
Wow, Dnipro,
Oh, wow.
Ukraine. Yeah.
I love this. What I love about this is look at we are coming from all over the place. We've got folks from the UK. Fantastic. Welcome. All over the place. And yet we can gather here together to do good work together. So wonderful. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, let me do a quick introduction for myself. My name is Jessica Gustales. I am one of the two evangelists here at Lucid. My background is as an agile consultant, facilitator, and coach, and I am wildly passionate about true collaboration, high-performing teams, and the humans that make up the organizations that we're all a part of. I am delighted to be joined today by our very own Brian Stallings, Susan Schmidt, and Steve Wellman. Speaking of Brian, would you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Brian Stallings. I work out of our Salt Lake City headquarters office. I'm the chief evangelist at Lucid. And I'm excited to be with you because you're our peeps, right? When it comes to Agile, I've been in that community for over 20 years, since its inception, really. And during that time, I've trained and coached hundreds of individuals, I've so many teams and organizations. Jessica and I work frequently together, and we're both credentialed professional coaches and facilitators. So hopefully you see some of that from us today. Next,
Nice.
let's meet Susan.
Yeah.
Hi, it's so nice to see everyone here. My name is Susan, and I'm a product director here at Lucid. I've been in the tech industry for just over 15 years, and a big part of what I love is just helping product and development teams execute effectively on delivering value to users and the business. So with that, let's meet Steve.
Hey everyone, I'm Steve Wellman, Senior Director of Global Billing and Payments here at Lucid. I've spent the last 8 years helping companies design, architect, and build scalable internal business systems, and I'm pumped to be here.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to the three of you, and welcome to all of you who have joined us. Before we get started, I'm going to cover a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. You can expect an email with a link to the recording within a day or two of when we are done. And that'll be sent to the email that you used to register for this webinar. That email is also going to include some additional resources, including a free template, training courses, and more. So look forward to that. We also don't want this webinar to be just us talking at you. We want to hear from you. So feel free to hop into the chat and share your thoughts. You're already doing such a great job of that, letting us know who you are and where you come from. If you have any questions specifically for our Lucid team, please use the Q&A section. This is going to help our team be able to stay on top of questions and answer as many as we possibly can. Finally, live captions are enabled for this webinar, so you can go ahead and turn those on if you'd like. All right, before we dive in, Brian, let's describe big room planning and how it's evolving.
Sure. So we're using that term big room planning for this event, but it goes by a lot of different names. You've probably heard of them. Even the initials BRP will grab your attention if you're familiar. So SAFE brought along the name product increment planning, but even historically, it used to be known as release planning. But so many organizations today are releasing continuously. We started to have to call it releases planning, and that sounded silly. And I've even seen it called milestone planning, I think, Jessica, to get over that confusion. But to define it, it's an inclusive form of planning, meaning involving all the teams and those participating in the work. And it has the objective of collaboratively crafting a high-level plan that is going to align that top-down strategic direction that we get in an organization with the bottom-up work that teams will be expected to do over a series of iterations to accomplish those goals.
Lovely. And while this is commonly employed in Agile and Scrum environments, it is something that all organizations can incorporate into their regular planning process. So during a BRP or a big room planning or an increment or a milestone, whatever your organization decides to call it, an organization essentially momentarily pauses the corresponding initiatives to get everyone in the same place, working together to create a shared understanding of upcoming goals and initiatives. Now, when I say everyone, Brian, who am I meaning?
Well, we'd have roles from the Agile teams. You'd have product folks like Susan, design people that are working along with those teams, architects, operational SMEs like Steve, other SMEs across the organization, maybe in architecture or database, etc. You'd have sponsors and management who's interested, folks like that. Historically, remember, these sessions were always held in person. Historically, I'm talking about like before COVID, right? 4 or 5 years ago. And we would time box these events over the course of 1 to 3 days, depending on the complexity and the size of the group. So these are still happening, Jessica, in person in some organizations, but it's no longer the norm. People are finding that it can be expensive and difficult to schedule. And so if we're able to do that with any amount of remoteness, then that tends to work well. So we tend to see teams break these today now across longer time frames. And Susan, you're going to talk about that, I think, where teams might say, wow, half a day is about all I can stand being on with a remote meeting like this. And so let's break it over a series of days or even do segments across a week or two. So I'm interested to see those examples today.
Yeah, this did, as Brian mentioned, used to be done in person and sometimes would even require travel. So people would fly in to the headquarters to have this kind of event. But during the pandemic, really, we had to sort of cobble together ways of doing it virtually. The examples we're going to show today involve a hybrid mix of participants, which is an incredible benefit when using a product like Lucid. Really makes it possible for us to come together collectively from wherever we are to be involved in this kind of planning. Brian, if you were doing something in more of a hybrid environment, what would your ideal time frame be?
Well, in today's environment, I think we get a lot of value out of planning these sessions over, let's say, those half days that we suggested, and doing them over 4 to 5 days during a week. And that tends to be a powerful way to get them done.
Nice. Well, now that we've kind of described what it is that we're talking about, let's dive in and see some examples. Susan, you want to share with us a little bit about what you've been working on?
Yeah, I would love to share. So I too have had a lot of experience with big room planning and kind of the traditional planning where you're all in the same room, definitely pre-pandemic. I've worked in such a small office where we've had to rent an additional room to actually get together and do our big room planning. And there's a lot of upside to that. There's a lot of downside as well. You have to take photos, you have to make sure your stickies don't fall off the wall, you have to figure out your dependency strings. And one of the things I've loved about working at Lucid, especially as a remote employee myself, I'm out in the Bay Area in California, and is that this visual collaboration really up-levels the kind of traditional walk-the-wall planning and opens it up to those hybrid environments. And so you'll see that in my example today. So I'm going to walk through my example of how we facilitate planning for large initiatives here at Lucid. So I've heard Brian say in the past, we plan to replan, and that's absolutely true of what we do here. You'll notice throughout my example that our teams are continuously breaking kind of into small groups for pre-work and then coming together again as a large group to synthesize before doing that all over again. So what we're looking at here is the first session board for a big room planning initiative that we did recently. And before we even came together as a big group, we had some pre-work for our 13 or 14 teams that were involved in this initiative. So we first gave our teams a high-level overview of our goals, the vision, the why behind the initiative, what our objectives were with this initiative. And then we scheduled a 2-week sprint where teams went off on their own and went to hone in on their workflows, spend a good amount of time in research and discovery, and create really preliminary high level roadmaps over the next 12 months. And the teams did this initially on separate boards, utilizing a lot of our features like intelligent diagramming, sticky notes, and emojis to kind of visualize those workflows and facilitate conversations between the teams. So after the team completed their pre-work sprint, we came together in our first big room planning. The teams brought their pre-work, which we actually pulled together on a single board for synthesis. And then each team used the same template so that it was kind of consistent for us to talk across all of these teams' work. And they presented their research takeaways, the workflows that they had identified, and their draft 12-month roadmaps. Then the larger group all together talked about how these things really fit together inside this initiative, the implied capabilities that would be required by that identified feature work. And as the teams discussed their parts, we took notes on this source of truth board, and it enabled us to have a lot of conversations while we also had the full context of the initiative as kind of an easy reference alongside our discussions. So after this first session, we gained a lot of clarity about how each team's work fits together into the large initiative, what the goals of each team are, and then the initiative leads like myself synthesized all of those preliminary roadmaps into a big high-level roadmap source of truth. After the session, we assigned the team's action items to diverge into smaller groups and go figure that out. They had about 1 to 2 weeks of asynchronous work to answer those open questions, identify open questions, make sure we had the right ownership on each of these features, identify dependencies, define the features and start designs. And we asked them to return with all of that information along with a t-shirt size level estimation. So not a full estimation, but just a really rough t-shirt size level. And so once we had that done, we completed the action items, then we came together as a large group again, bringing the context and understanding about any changes and new information to the whole group. We got agreement and alignment along with commitment from the teams about the ownership and the high level estimation. And we tracked those with our capacity calculations utilizing our dynamic table, which you can see here, which is a really helpful way to do this, especially in a hybrid environment. So once all of the estimation and priority was aligned, we created a board with a detailed color-coded timeline. So we cleaned up all the information, created a modified source of truth to track the work of the initiative. And we used this material to gain alignment, not only through our own teams, but also with our leadership teams and executive groups. The next planning phase after this alignment was completed was for teams to once again break into groups, taking this timeline and adding the corresponding projects and task tickets into Jira, which is the project management tracking software that we use. Once the teams had that into Jira, we can actually use dynamic shapes and pulling data bidirectionally from Jira. We're not copying this over. This is coming straight from Jira, so we don't have that tedious work of copying things twice. And we created a burn up and burn down chart with progress shapes to track and identify risks throughout the initiative. This particular artifact is one of the ones we use throughout the execution of the project, and people love this. Everyone from leadership down to the teams, this is a really effective way to track risk management, to see progress, to see any places where we may have added scope. You can see a little bump there where scope was added, and it's just super, super helpful. So yeah, I think through this example, it's just, again, I want to call out this method that we have of converging the team into the big initiative group and then taking time to go out asynchronously and figure out all the nitty-gritty details of what we're doing, and then converging again to drive that alignment. And you can see how we really utilize Lucid's tools for everything from the brainstorming and the freeform discussion to presentation level source of truth resources and continuous tracking boards that we use every day to track the project progress. And by the way, that some of the stuff that we were working on in this initiative is actually around bringing our users more agile features and functionality in Lucid. So stay tuned for some more announcements about that.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. Yes, very excited for those things coming up. And wow, do I love this burn up, burn down chart. And that two-way integration with Jira is part of the reason that I joined Lucid, frankly. And so to see it being used like that, I love the clarity that you get using this as you described, and that single source of truth that allows for that planning and replanning to happen. That was a really excellent example. Thank you so much for that.
Hey,
All right.
Jessica, just as an aside, and Susan, I don't doubt that a lot of folks out there are grateful that this is being recorded because they're going to want to watch all the tips and wisdom that came out of your session, Susan. Seeing it practically laid out like that really gives us an understanding of how to accomplish these kinds of planning sessions over time with our teams. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Nicely done. Let's dive into one more example. I think, Steve, you've got some things to show us.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Great example, Susan. As all of you know, business functions grow and scale at different rates. For example, sales could be a priority, or building a new product. Maybe some internal operations need to be scaled. A couple of years ago, we identified an area in our systems and offerings that had fallen behind other parts of the business and started slowing us down. The main reason it had fallen behind was due to the size and the effort it would take to update it and the critical nature of the function. The leadership team came together and agreed that it was time to address these gaps. So we pulled together key stakeholders and documented the current state in this Lucid chart document. We identified areas of the flow that were problematic, represented here by red circles, so it was clear to everyone what we were planning to change and where our gaps were. We reviewed the flow chart with all stakeholders, and everyone agreed with the flow and the areas of concern. Then we updated the status of the document to approved, so everyone knew that it was our actual current state and our actual documentation. Then we created a future state document. We highlighted things that were missing or needed a significant change in orange. Then we reviewed the proposed future state with the key stakeholders, and everyone agreed with the flow and the proposed areas and things we were going to change. Again, we updated the status. It was approved, and everybody knew this is what it's going to look like, and this is our official document, so you can all begin working off of it. Now, the delivery project was quite large. There are over a dozen different teams spanning a good portion of the business involved in one way or another. We needed to get everyone aligned on the scope of the project and do effective planning. So we met with the team leads and architects to set expectations, review the documentation, current and future state that we created, and prepared them for what was coming. Having prepped all the team leads and architects, we then brought them all together on a Zoom call in this Lucid Spark board. We created buckets of work and began dropping sticky notes in the buckets. We spent an hour together initially, so everyone was aligned on how we were executing this stage of the planning, and they knew what was being asked of them and their teams. Because the ask was too large to complete in an hour, which Brian has alluded to already, right? And Jessica, everyone spent the rest of the week dropping items on the board asynchronously before coming back together and review it as a group. This gave them the necessary time to think through what was needed and review it with their teams to see if they were missing anything. Once the week had passed and we had what we believed to be all of the necessary items, we got the architects and leads back together and then started aligning the stickies in priority order, left to right, depending on what was needed first, large lift, critical, right? So we could understand dependencies. And from that, our milestones or iterations started to take shape. At this point, our ideation and high-level planning was complete. So product managers and team leads took this board back to their teams and started epic and sprint planning. Then, as Susan just showed, the teams put their work into Jira and used burn down charts to track progress. Since this project had a lot of overlap and dependency work among various teams and systems, we needed to pull the architects together to ensure systems and flows aligned during necessary handoffs. So at the beginning of each iteration, we'd pull all of the architects into a Zoom call. During the meeting, we'd pull up the system flow chart. We'd pull up the previous iteration. We'd duplicate that flow, and then they'd update the flow chart based on the next iteration's requirements. This gave us a running document that showed the system and how it evolved during each iteration, and we understood when the different components came into play. Having a Lucid Spark board and the Lucid chart flows gave us a high level of confidence that everyone understood the large ask and requirements, even though it was remote. A lot of this happened during COVID time when people weren't in the office, and getting everyone aligned and on the same page could be a bit of a task. So it helped us ensure that the dependencies and deliveries of the various teams lined up and that we didn't have any significant gaps due to planning misses during the delivery.
That's quite a story.
This is wonderful. I love the context that you set for the team and for the teams, bringing all of those architects together to share, here's where we are and here's where we're headed. I imagine that really helped create clarity and alignment, which is really what we're looking for from these big room planning events. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a bit of a task and it took quite a bit of time, but everybody came into it understanding what we were trying to accomplish and where the current future states were. And it helped everybody start off on that same page, which was really helpful and helped accelerate the process for us.
What I love about what you said there, Steve, is it's slowing down to speed up. It's not barreling into something. We actually take that moment to pause, come together, alignment, clarity, understanding, context, so that we don't trip over our feet when we actually start running. That's fantastic.
And, you know, Steve, you mentioned something that's really critical is everybody understood and could come on the same page. I've walked into these events where there were, you know, like you mentioned, a dozen or more teams, and people are sort of like discouraged, like, you know, we're about to start another death march or some terrible concept. And yet when we're done, after they've been involved in this inclusive planning and they've seen what visual collaboration lets you see, they oftentimes come away saying, you know, we could totally do this. And it really shapes the enthusiasm with which that we all approach our work, for sure.
Lovely.
Great stories.
Before we jump into steps, I just wanted to mention that we will be sharing a free release planning template in the chat, but will also be included in the email. Now let's start going into actually the steps of this kind of event. Before we dive directly into the steps, though, both Steve and Susan mentioned this really, really critical part. There might be some considerable pre-work that has to occur before your planning session. So, for example, if there's nothing decided for the teams to plan, your event is really going to struggle to succeed. So make sure that pre-work, that setup gets done first. Okay, so let's assume all of that pre-work has been done and the first day of planning has arrived. Step one is opening the meeting with everyone.
You know, this is a great time. We've heard some of these examples from Susan and Steve to get aligned around what are we here to accomplish. And when I facilitate these, I love to bring in a senior exec or a sponsor from the business to open the session and really charge the group with what we're here to accomplish, to charge them with the authority, to help them have the confidence that they can conduct this planning activity together and make the necessary decisions. And then as we do that, we're making sure to review the purpose that we're all there for and the objectives for the meeting. I guess I said meeting, you know, this is a session or a series of sessions, and it's not like it follows a given agenda. We're done when we meet the purpose and the objectives. And so we want to adequately establish that shared purpose and establish common goals across the teams, like we saw in Susan's example. So then, as she shared, we'll review the agenda. You know, these are the things that we're going to accomplish together. And with a working session of this size and magnitude and everyone involved, we're going to want to be really clear about what we're going to accomplish together and how we're going to do that. So it deserves a detailed agenda that will set the stage for the kind of collaboration that we'll be doing. And Jessica, I think we should avoid making this a time-based agenda because there's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know that this segment of the session might take 30 minutes. Instead, we need to focus on the sequence of questions that we're trying to answer. So I love a question-based agenda for these types of events and the decisions that we need to make along the way. And so those are the high-level activities that will help the group to address them step by step.
100% agreed, especially those first few. You have no idea really how long some of this is going to take. And so giving yourself the freedom to be able to accomplish what needs to be accomplished before kind of moving to the next bit is
Yes.
really important. I would say also important is establishing a working agreement and ground rules for the event. So you want to set up practices and procedures that everyone agrees to follow to guide everyone towards successful collaboration. If we don't have that in place, we may see some odd behavior because this is a huge group of people coming together. So you want to have that as a foundation. And then as both of our examples highlighted, we really want to set the context. So you might highlight big wins from our last session. What happened since we last all got together? You may have, I've had our business partners come in and say, here's the impact that you've made on our customers. When we release this is the exciting stuff that we got to see. So everybody feels really good about the work that they've done. You also may want to walk through any additional resources. So you may have things on your board that are really information radiators. So things like calendars. Do we have a holiday coming up? Those are important things. I always forget, like, oh yeah, I'm in training for a week. That's going to impact my capacity. So having calendars available and visible. Parking lot, there may be things that come up that actually aren't going to help us accomplish what we're here to accomplish today, but they still need to be addressed. We can stick that in a parking lot. We also want to make sure there's a spot to hang decisions, action items, goals, dates, your roadmap. Having all of that available is really, really important as you're beginning this event or series of events.
As you list these, Jessica, the facilitator in you is definitely obvious.
Yeah, we put all these things at people's fingertips. It makes it easy. When I think about a parking lot, it's like, oh, that's a really great question. And we are still here to accomplish this one thing. So it's really helpful to have a place to hang that so we don't all get hooked and head in that direction. All right, let's get to step 2. Our examples had great examples of this step, which is that high level planning.
So this is a multi-team event that we're talking about generally for something like big room planning. And so when you've got a lot of teams involved, you're going to have additional agenda items. And so following that opening, I like to offer a forward-looking long-term view and a forward-looking, maybe shorter midterm view. Like, what do we hope to accomplish and what's immediately in front of us? And as Jessica mentioned, we can have a conversation about the previous release and how we're going to make things better for our customers from this point forward. And given that the teams will have context around what we're creating, it'll give them an understanding of what we're about to build. They might have seen a preview of it, but usually in this type of planning, we're getting folks together for the first time to talk about where we're going.
Love it. And I think Steve had a really good example of that, that setting the stage, the setting the stage to have the conversations needed to be had, and really bringing in, like, do we need an architectural overview? We want to take a look at the roadmap and what's coming so that we not only have that look behind, but we have that look forward. I think of these events sort of, it's like, while we're sprinting, we're sort of heads down, looking at our feet, just doing the work that we need to do. This is an opportunity for us to lift our heads up a bit and see out to where is that roadmap, where are we headed, and then begin to plan what are the next steps that we need to take to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Then the teams can have that context. And at this next step, what I like to do is have the teams work together to determine what are the high-level items that they're going to tackle in the next planning, the planning that's about to come up. And you and I discussed this, Jessica, because we've seen it go both ways, right? Sometimes you see leaders assign, but you and I think we're aligned that the teams tend to know who's best to work on what, unless they're brand new teams. And so I like to ask the teams to come forward and select things like the epics or themes that they'll be working on and trust them to know.
Totally. Even if they are new teams, they know their own expertise and they'll be able to organize around the work, I think, really pretty effectively. And they know what they're good at and what they want to learn and all of that stuff. So the teams really are fantastic for figuring out what are the pieces that our group is going to take and really work on. Awesome. Okay, so step 3, we're being directed to step 3, facilitating team level planning.
Okay, so now we've got the teams. Oftentimes they are in a collaborative planning space separate from one another. Susan mentioned being in a large ballroom, and then you'd have some satellite rooms around it. Or maybe you've got the large training room in your offices, and you've got some smaller conference rooms or team bays for teams to do their independent planning. So we're breaking apart the program into separate sub-teams, and they're going to be doing a degree of planning themselves. Now, it also might be that we're not in person, as we talked about. And so you're going off into a Zoom breakout room and you're using a Lucid breakout board to do your planning. I think this is a fantastic use of breakout boards, actually. As a facilitator, you and I can have those set up, Jessica, in advance. And teams can do their planning, as Susan mentioned, asynchronously, even before they come to the joint event.
Yeah, I love the breakout boards for that, because you do have the ability to be in one place, but do your work. It's like going to different corners of the room like we used to do in person, where you're still in one giant room, but you've got some space that's just there for you. And that's what those breakout boards help with. I'll tell you a secret too. There's a new feature in Lucid that I absolutely love, because teams get really excited about going off and planning, but sometimes you need to bring them all back to have a conversation inside. And so while I can bring them back in Zoom, they may still be sort of fiddling with their own team level plans. I can actually make them all come back to the main board as well. I love those features. They make me feel like all powerful being that I can tell, come over here. We're supposed to be doing this now. I love that. Okay.
That's funny. There's a little bit of evil now showing in you, Jessica.
come to where I'm directing you. Okay, so while the teams are in their breakout boards or doing their individual team level planning, they really should focus on the following. So they need to identify key dates. Again, those team calendars are vital, and think through capacity planning.
Yes, and so with this, they can now, understanding that context, the dates, what they're going to be working on, they should be finalizing their backlog refinement. And we heard about that in both of our examples. So that's going to be clarifying the upcoming backlog items, splitting out items that are too large, writing acceptance criteria for those that they've just learned more things about, estimating anything that's new or that was revealed like, oh, we didn't understand that until today, right? And then product owners, you can order your backlog. And then the team will take that into the conversation about, well, if we were to forecast forward about how many of these backlog items will fit into one iteration from now, into the second iteration from now, like let's do some forecasting and get a sense of, any of the unknowns or open questions or figuring out the dependencies or risks that we see in front of us.
So important. Love that. And as the team is working through their high-level plan, they may return to the multi-team program plan to add information about any of that. And they're probably going to start to add their drafts plans, and they'll start looking at what are the other teams doing? What are their plans looking like? And are we beginning to align those plans so that they come together so we can action on them? All right. Speaking of that, this is actually step 4, combining those team level plans.
Right. So teams have been in their independent collaborative conversations and done final planning so that now we can pull every team together. And so oftentimes this is where you see the swim lanes start to be created, where teams are laying out what they've decided in their separate breakout groups. And then teams are coming back together into one place as a program to hear and look at that single source of truth. Like, okay, so what is everybody else's plans? And how does that align with ours? And what surprises do we see? And it does happen that way because we've planned independently as a team. And now for the first time, we're seeing everything together. And those things that get revealed are what we're there to work on together to address. And for this reason, I tend to put an agenda item in here, Jessica, so that we call it sometimes team by team speed dating. We want the teams that work closely together to walk their wall or walk their board together and have a conversation team to team about, and I've heard this conversation so many times. They're walking the board and they're like, okay, so here's where we're going to build this. And then they'll say to their team, where is the thing that you're going to build to connect into us? And the other team will say, we thought you were going to build that. And suddenly we realized nobody was planning on this thing that suddenly got revealed because we can see it and we're talking about it.
It's true. Those one-on-ones are so important as we begin to combine those team level plans. And then after we've done that, we've kind of gone into each other's breakout boards or into their spaces where everybody else has been planning. We actually come back together in that larger group to discuss. So I'll force everybody to come back to the main room, as you all know by now. And while individual plans were being constructed, other teams might have posted their shared issues, dependencies on other teams, and the facilitators are there when we bring everybody back to really ensure that as a larger group, we're addressing these. We want to make sure that we get any of those out of the way so that when the teams start running, they're not tripping over any of those things. So you'll go ahead and make sure that you address any of those unknowns. You may have to pull in folks, get questions answered. Make sure that all of the risks and issues that come up during the previous steps are covered, especially in high-risk areas.
You know, this is one of the reasons that I think using a visual collaboration platform like Lucid is a big win for teams, because it allows us to see everybody's stuff. Like when it's on the wall, that you just can't get to it. It's a big crowd of people. I mean, I've had 100 people in the room, but we can independently take a look at what we're curious about. We can review it. The timelines that we can create are available at your fingertips, right? You don't have to wander across the room to find it and disturb the whole group. So it makes this step of bringing our plans together and understanding the work so much easier, because all of these details have been recorded and they're at my fingertips.
Yeah, you've got all of the context that you need to create that alignment, to create that clarity. I mean, it used to be like we would have the big architecture conversation at the beginning, and then hopefully you remembered it for the multiple days after. But you actually have all of that context right there in front of you, which is really, really helpful.
Okay, so now we're at a point that we would say, with everything visible, it starts to be obvious that some things are popping out that we have to make some decisions about. Like, say, for example, team 3, their plan just goes on and on and on for another 2 sprints past where everybody else is done. And we're like, okay, now we know who has the long pole, and the whole program can't deliver until all that work gets done. Do we want to do something about that? Can we share that work? Or we might see that our date is such that there's no way we're going to deliver it with the current set of teams. And so we need to have conversations about moving the date or bringing in additional teams. So this program board that we're creating collectively can be that visual representation of everything that we know about the work to be done. And it highlights those good news, bad news elements. And so now the team is standing there wondering, well, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to make this plan work? So that means now is the time to communicate that story to the sponsors and stakeholders. So I love to have folks come back. If they were there for the opening, I want them to come back as we do this readout and then have that conversation about the what ifs and consider what we call trade-off decisions that we need a sponsor or senior leaders to make about, as I mentioned, change the scope, move the date, involve more teams.
Nice. And then that's the time then we can incorporate those decisions into the plans.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next, speaking of decisions, we want to make sure that we maintain a record of these decisions and action items.
Yeah, so lots of conversations have happened. It's been perhaps a little bit busy, chaotic, so much going on. Decisions made in some sub-conversations that not everybody was aware of. And if they're not recorded in a place, then maybe they didn't happen, right? Or at least not everybody's going to be aware of that. So let's keep a record so that teams can go back and reference these documents at any time. They're right there on the team planning board. And we get an understanding of what the ideas were, the reasoning for certain decisions, or why something was prioritized differently, or why information was pulled out of the scope, all kinds of valuable insights. And this allows us then to expose all of what needs to be addressed, as we mentioned. And we want teams collecting those decisions along the way.
I love that, because really, it's one thing to uncover that we've got something going on, but really teams need to see that there's action being planned, and that will be taken. It gives them a sense of confidence that I've been heard. We see that there's this thing that might be in the way, and we're going to go do something about it. So before we close the session, we collectively build an action plan so that there's clear owners and dates associated with each. Again, that vitally important clarity and structure to your action plan is important. And you want to make sure that the action plan is transitioned to a program level leader for follow-up, so that the team knows someone is caring for this stuff, so that when I go back to begin my sprints to start running, that these things are being cared for.
That really boosts the certainty of everybody in the meeting when they see it happening in the meeting, that, okay, well, it looks like we have a plan for these things. I can have greater confidence that this can be a success.
And because we're keeping a record of these decisions being made, and we're doing it in a visual way, these big information radiators, it allows for us to have that context over time. So really, when you're coming back to say, why did we make that decision? All of that information and the context around that decision is right there at your fingertips. It allows for really what we like to call a living blueprint of your organizations and the decisions being made.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, we're nearly there. Yeah. So, but before we get to sort of the end part, we need to get a confidence vote.
Yeah, so we've involved everyone in this kind of planning. We mentioned it being an inclusive type of planning event, but we can't just assume that because everybody's been there and they followed along through the agenda and they sat and listened, that everybody's bought in. Everybody believes. Everybody has had their say. Now, we want a means by which we can gauge the buy-in of the group, and that can be a challenging part of the process, because a meeting of this size, people may not feel confident speaking up. So I've seen people say, well, management doesn't want us to do this. They don't want us to have this kind of an open conversation about doubts. Or others say, well, it was a delay for us to kind of process the concerns people shared. We just needed to get done with the meeting, so we skipped it. But in my opinion, skipping this step in the session isn't an option, because without the confidence of all the team members about these plans, there's going to be too little momentum following the event. And so let's talk about the dynamics that can occur here, I think.
Yeah, this is really important. As Susan highlighted, we begin the event in this wildly divergent state, which proceeds as we gather info and begin to assemble all of the things that we know, all the things that are in all the brains all across the organization. And as everyone begins that does their best in sort of translating what's to come, forecasting what's coming up, planning efforts are all in and timelines are laid out, it's begun to converge into one, here's what we think the plan is. And the part that's really important here is that everyone's going to be really excited about the plan. Like, we just did all of that amazing stuff in the last iteration. We now know the way forward. Let's get going. But as a facilitator, you really want to kind of pull everybody back before we move forward and end the session. Get everybody to slow down, take a look at the entirety of the plan, and ensure that we converge all of those perspectives into one that's collective and aligned. So really what we want to get to is, what does each individual think? After all, we started off stating that this is an inclusive form of planning. So how do we get every voice into the system? Are you in? Are you individually in? Do you feel like this is something we can accomplish together?
We used to do those. Oh, sorry, Jessica. We used to do those fist to 5 conversations and ask everybody in the room, like, are you a 5 all in, or are you maybe a 2 or a 1, which is, I have serious doubts, or I think this is a terrible plan. But what do we do then when we're a remote and distributed group, right?
Yeah,
so
it's super important. It's super important. This is a really important question, because especially with a group of this size, we may see either a couple things. We may see some anchoring. I'm gonna go with whatever the highest paid person in the room, or whoever's the most senior. I'm gonna anchor into that. Or I am the only one that's seeing this big giant risk, and I don't know that we've addressed it. But there's 100 people in this room, and I don't think I want to say anything. Let's get it done. So we actually use something called visual activities, which is I am so delighted by this because it actually allows every voice in the room to be heard. We go in, everybody can go in and take like a fist to 5 visual activity, and when you're taking the activity, you actually can't see what everybody else is thinking. So as you can see here, we're taking a confidence level vote, can't see what anybody else's confidence is, and then we can go in and look and say, how confident collectively as a group are we about what we're about to head into? And as you can see, a bunch of people have been taking this, and you can see that we're leaning towards pretty high confidence. We might be close enough, we're probably close enough that we can actually get going. And because we can see where people have voted, we can see, oh, there's somebody over here has got a really interesting perspective, and we want to go in and find out, what are you seeing that the rest of us aren't seeing? And what will it take for you to feel much more confident about what we're going to go do?
Creates a lot of safety, right? When we can have those conversations. So I love this. Well, so on to step 7, I think.
Yeah, with just a few more final steps, we are now at creating a communication plan. So it's not realistic to expect every single team member in our collective inclusive environment or stakeholder to be available for every big room planning event. Somebody is inevitably going to be out of the office, sick, otherwise unable to attend. And we've got others who won't be in the scope of the planning event, but do need to be informed. So how do we go about doing that?
And plus we have ourselves and we tend to forget things. So
True.
for those reasons, we need a communication plan. And what we're showing you right now is a simple template for creating that. This plan is going to include an outline of what information needs to be shared with those that weren't present and how it will be shared. It's going to describe, the stakeholder and their need and maybe how frequent we're going to be communicating with them, who owns that communication, with which priority or the preferred means by which we're going to communicate that. So things like a stakeholder review conversation or a newsletter about the program might all be fitting in here.
Fantastic. So we've got that communication plan, we've got our action plan, we got our communication plan, we got our plan, we're ready to go. But one thing that we want to make sure is clear is our last step. And this was the step that I saw a lot of buzz about this when Susan was presenting, is maintaining the plan or plan to replan.
And we should say, is Jessica, that we're now closing our big room planning event, and let's fast forward a week or two down the road and what's likely to have happened.
Yeah, the plans we create ages as soon as our teams begin that first sprint on the plan, sometimes even that day. I like to say, as Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And so as we begin the work, those plans begin to transition into reality. Right.
So we'll start to see if we're collecting that information, as we heard from our 2 examples. Are we collecting that information and comparing how closely team actuals are progressing along our forecasted plan? Of course, the plan we created is a guesstimate with the best information that we had at the time, but now we know so much more because we're moving forward into the work. And so we need to follow along and record actuals and maintain and adapt the plans as we go. This is commonly somewhere where we need the product owners or product directors, Susan mentioned, to have these frequent conversations along the roadmap and what's in the backlog and how are the teams progressing and et cetera. Are there more trade-off decisions that need to be made? So maintaining these plans that you've built is vital. And this used to be such a heavy lift to accomplish because we would finish the planning meeting and then have to figure out a way of how to persist an entire room of Post-its. Right? But now we've got this program board that we might have created in Lucid, and we've got an action item plan, we've got a communication plan, and we've handed those off to the right parties so that we have the right conversations.
It's so lovely to have that that created and easily maintainable because it's already there. You don't have to recreate anything. It's phenomenal. And because you've created this throughout your big room planning event, really centralizing all that documentation, including, as we mentioned, the context, brainstorms, team level planning, group level planning, design documents, processes, you have a place to keep everyone up to date and informed at all times. You want to make sure that everyone has access to the document after the conclusion of the event. And everybody knows that, especially with the two-way integrations that we have, this plan is going to be updated and maintained over time. So elements of it are going to evolve and change. And at any time, anybody on any team can come in and say, how are we doing on this plan? What's changed? And where am I headed next?
You know, that's my favorite part, is meeting with stakeholders and showing that we're proceeding and that they can steer us to a successful outcome by making those decisions. So part of the maintenance is ongoing planning. We can make the best plan in the world to summarize, but things will change. And so this living blueprint of how the plan is being adapted according to the new information, this is agile, right? And we inspect and adapt. This is key to having a plan that continues to be workable, usable, and realistic.
Plan to replan. I love it.
Do that, and we're done.
I'd also add to what you just said. If you're someone like me that wakes up at 3 a.m. in the morning in cold sweats because you're like, hey, did I remember this thing? Did we include it? Did we not? We can go back and I can take a look and be like, oh, it's there. We're good. I don't have to worry. Or hey, it's not. Probably need to talk to people, right?
It allows you to go back to sleep at 3:05.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, that is all 8 parts. So now thank you all for staying with us. And I'm excited to share that we've got a few things that'll help you get started. So you're going to receive in your email, or actually right here on screen as well, if you want it, a free release planning template, access to our amazing Lucid community. So you can go in and get support if you need it, or share tips and tricks with each other. That's fantastic. And a link to the Lucid training labs. So that'll allow you to take this learning and go even further with it. So we're really excited about that. Now, I know we've got a number of questions, so I want to go ahead and get started. I think, Susan, this might be a good one for you, this first one. Can you share if you have any standards around t-shirt size estimations and guidelines so we can convert them into monies for estimation?
Or maybe numbers there, yeah, but like number of sprints or points or that kind of thing. Totally understand. I don't know if we're able to go back to one of the boards in my example, but if we aren't, I'll describe it. We do have a guideline, and one of the things we did is you can see where we have, these are the t-shirt sizes, small, medium, large, extra large. One of the best practices that I have is we have extra, extra large here. I will often encourage teams to not go beyond an extra large, or especially not an extra, extra large, because at that point, there are so many unknowns that your estimate is probably just way too far out there. And you need to either break the work up so that you can estimate in smaller chunks, or go answer some really vital questions, because once you get out into 40 plus sprints, there's just so much risk there. But in terms of best practices, in this particular case, we agreed as a group, okay, what are our t-shirt sizes going to roughly mean? And then we wrote that down. Okay, small is 4, medium is 8 dev sprints, large is 12 dev sprints. And a dev sprint for us is the same across the company. This is not true of every organization, right? We are all on 2-week sprint cadences, but you may have organizations where there are different sprint cadences, and in that case you may need to adjust this formula. And it really is just about agreeing what numbers make sense for you. But the big point is you have agreement, it's documented here, and then you're able to take those rough t-shirt sizes and translate them into your first view of capacity, which is what you see here down these like team 1, team 2, team 3. We're like, okay, here are all the t-shirt sizes they gave us. Let's do a really quick arithmetic math on what that means for us. And that allows us to translate it onto the timeline. The other best practice I'll say is, especially at this early stage that we're showing here, I encourage teams to pad. Don't give your optimistic t-shirt size. Give your slightly more pessimistic t-shirt size, because it's always better if we go down, but if we're wrong in the other direction, that causes a lot more risk incurment.
I love that, Susan. We have such a tendency to be optimistic problem solvers. And so allowing that to enter into the space is such a gift. So thank you for adding that special tip. Love it. Okay, next question. Will the links we've shared be included with the recording? So just a quick update on that. We will have some resources included in the email with the recording, and we'll add additional links and resources actually in the community that I referenced, the community thread that we have specific to this webinar, because there were great questions in the chat. And so we want to make sure you have access to all of that. So make sure to check out that community link.
It's a great place to continue the conversation as well.
Fantastic. Are there any considerations to be aware of if your big room is the internet, because your department is all remote opposed to being in one physical location?
You know, for this, I think that you and I oftentimes talk about how Lucid Spark is changing that context, how it allows you to create a virtual where. And so these boards, and I don't know if we can show the template on the screen, Michelle, right now, but these boards that we create become that virtual where for the teams, with their breakout boards being their dedicated team planning spaces, and the big room being that large board with everybody's stuff together. And so though you're not in the same place covering the walls, you are in the same place virtually covering the canvas. And so I think that's something to consider and practice a bit.
I can't say from doing this too. It all depends on how disciplined your organization is when you create these things. If they're really high level, there's a chance that people don't fully understand the details and what it is they're trying to do. If they're too low level, they can get way too big and cumbersome and hard to consume. So it's really about the team, the level of discipline, and what it is you're trying to accomplish with it. For our initial one, high level was great. So we started with buckets and stickies. Then we needed to get more low level. We intentionally broke that out into different boards so that people that needed it had it, but the people that didn't need that level didn't need it. But
you know, one of our secrets is, and Susan, you were involved in this with Jessica and I, was to do a simulated release planning event with the team leaders and the directors so that they had a chance to practice on a backlog that Jessica and I made up, so that they could learn release planning before we brought 100 and some people together to do it. So it was worth us spending, 5 or 6 hours to actually practice.
Yeah,
and it was really fun Taylor Swift concert ticket themed too, which I think really engaged people, and it was so fun to have that worked in.
we had a great time building that out. I love that. One other tip I'll just add in, you want to pay attention to facilitation best practices in remote settings. So there's all kinds of tips and tricks out there. So just making sure that everybody, things like have their cameras on, and there's all kinds of information about that. But think about what the experience of the participant is like in a remote environment. All right, do you find that you have, next question, do you find that you have different note takers than someone facilitating the process?
When I do this in a larger environment, I need more than just myself and Jessica. And so we meet with Scrum Masters in advance, we meet with product owners in advance, and we might have folks that are learning about facilitation be there to support, and they may be scribing things, just like the team that we built today has people that you can't even see that are responding to your questions or manipulating the visuals. So put a team together so that you can do just what you're saying, have those notes, but also don't take that away from the teams themselves. They should be taking notes of the things that they identify as they do their planning.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads into the last question, which how do you go about merging different teams' plans? And I'll highlight that the teams are going to do it. So you don't have to be the responsible one that mashes everyone together. That's the team. The teams are going to go out and do their regular planning for their teams, and then they'll bring all of that information back and they'll work on merging those together. And that's where they'll have those conversations about, well, if you're doing that, then when am I doing this? And all of those things kind of get resolved throughout the course of the experience. Okay, with 1 minute left, thank you everyone for your amazing engagement, all of these great questions. This is really wonderful. And before we close, we'd love for each of you to put one thing in the chat that's your biggest takeaway from today. What are you going to take with you and go play with after this session? So we'll let you answer all of that. Visual activities, love it. Those are one of my favorite things of all time. Integration, probably the reason I came to Lucid. That's fantastic. Love it. So many good nuggets in here. Remember to look for the recording and additional resources to be sent to the email you registered with. Thank you so much, Brian, Susan, Steve. Amazing, amazing. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.